if you want something to be successful, pour more of you in it than anything else. Because if you take the appreciation for creating it, other people are bound to see the love you have for it or the love you put in it. Even if they don't agree with it, they can still appreciate the passion and love you put in it. And I think that's the one thing I think it reconfirmed for me. Keep pouring love into things. Keep doing things that not only bring you joy, but you will work on at 2:00 in the morning when everyone else is asleep. Things that, you will gladly do for free as well as make money on it. And to me, that's a guiding principle.
So it's Jamie again, and welcome to another episode of the One World Your Story podcast. Today is Friday, October 2nd. Crazy, crazy, crazy. October 2nd, 2020. And I am here with Chad Thompson. So excited to be speaking with you today. I don't know, would you call yourself, I would think creator rather than founder based on all the things you just told me about being creative, but the creator of the Black Market, would you say?
I would say that's fair. Yeah, that's it's a nice ambiguous title.
Yeah, totally. And we could talk about what actually fits in there. But really at the end of the day, based on my understanding of what I know about you so far, which isn't a lot, is that you're creative, an artist, really. And looking to bring that and share that to the world. So any holes you want to fill in right off the bat about who you are and what you're up to these days, Chad?
No, I think that's pretty accurate. And as far as what I'm into, it's a lot of things. And that's both a gift and a curse because,
Totally.
You have all these great ideas and you have all of these lanes that you want to play in, but there's only ever 24 hours in a day and you have to find time to eat and sleep. So I rob from one and pay to the other, but that's really me right now. And I think the more I get the itch to, explore a different avenue in a different lane, I don't limit myself anymore. I just say, look, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do it. Whether it gets 1 view or 100,000 views, I'm going to take the same approach with it. I mean, it's, because it's a form of expression. I don't do it for recognition or accolades. I do it for me. And if it's appreciated outside, so be it. But, I'm really in a good space right now as far as creativity is concerned. And whatever lane I find myself in, I don't limit myself.
I love all of that. And by the way, you said you don't live it yourself anymore. Mm-hmm. Did something happen? Was there a switch? When did that change happen?
I think it's maturation. And when I say maturation, it's more along the lines of, when you don't care how it's received. And that's not to mean that there is not an appreciation for other people's viewpoints, but it's more or less to say, I'm okay whether, this is widely regarded or whether there's 2 or 3 people that are passionate about what I've done. Because again, it's more about self-exploration. It's more about creativity, and it's less about approval. It's less about getting some sort of recognition from someone else. So I think the freedom in that comes with not allowing yourself to use that as your guiding light, and that by, I mean, other people's viewpoints of what you're doing and how you're doing it. And for so long, it was, I'm going to make this so that people can like it or that they can retweet it or that they can, I can get 500 or 600 likes on Instagram. I don't care about that anymore. I mean, I'm 40 years old. I'm past that point. I've been in corporate America. I've been on the creative side. I've owned my own business for 20 years. I've done it all. And the one thing I've found in that is I'm happiest when I don't care. And when I don't care, it just frees me up to do whatever it is that I feel like doing and really give me to it and not color it with other people's perception in mind.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think what I'm hearing from you is if you can let go of doing it for other people, then inherently you're doing it for yourself, which really at the end of the day is self-love.
Yep.
And how many people talk about that? It's like, how can you love somebody else if you can't love yourself first? How is the work that you're going to produce really like fulfilling and what you could actually do if it's for someone else? When it's for you, that's when the magic really happens, you know? So I love all of that. And curious to know how Black Market started within all of that, because I mean, I imagine that was, how many years ago did you start Black Market?
Oh gosh, it's been 3. It's been 3 years since I started that, but that's not the first venture I had. The first venture I had was the Dynamo Ink Company.
That was the graphic design business, right?
And with that, that's, you know, that gives you a glimpse into kind of how I operate and how I think. That started as graphic design, you know, multimedia, you know, the whole 9. But what I found is that through web design, through design, there was a limit to the expression that I could convey. So I started blogging, and the blogging started a while back on Facebook. Then I kind of got off Facebook, and then on Instagram, I would comment and I would say things. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, you know, I'm not like a one-line person. So I don't do 180 characters or less, because to me, thought in serious subject matter is a little bit more nuanced than that. So I'd find myself writing 7, 8, 9, 10 lines of, you know, feedback or perception on a topic. So I started blogging, and that's how the Black Market started, because the topics where I felt like were either overrepresented or underrepresented was in the nuanced thought, in the nuanced perspective of Black Americans to everyday subject matter. Because sensationalism really doesn't drive me. I you know, anyone that knows me will tell you I am not an extreme right or an extreme left person when it comes to how I see things. I operate in the gray. And the gray, to me, is where you find the truth. And that's how I started the Black Market, because it is primarily a perspective of very nuanced viewpoints on subject matter that tends to get sensationalized, and it drove me nuts. So that's how I started it, and people started to read it. So I kind of hit the pause button on it a few months back to say, okay, the site looks a mess, because I'm, you know, again, I have my hand in 50 million things. So I'm like, I'm going to have to sit down. I'm going to have to design it better. So that's really where I've been the last 3 months, is redesigning the site, doing the SEO on the back end, making sure that the graphics are up to par, you know, plugging everything in. And I'm about 95% of the way to re-releasing what I had previously released, because I'm, you know, and it's like, all right, you know, starting to get some legs, and let's put some money into it. So that's really where I am. But, you know, that's just me. I'm a nomad, you know, I'm a mental nomad, and things take me places. And I was
going to say, how can you be a nomad with 35 pairs of shoes just behind you? Come on.
And I will tell you,
can't see.
the story around there is there's only 4 pair that I've actually put on my feet.
No way.
Only
Come
4.
on.
Yep.
Okay, I digress. We're going back to that before we end this episode to find out, because like there's so much that you were just saying that I think is important to talk about. First of all, what timing to start? And by the way, if I cut you off, if there's something else that you wanted to say and all of that.
No, you're good.
Okay. So 3 years ago, you started this.
Yeah.
And I mean, just 2017, we could say.
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know, I can't help but think about the timing relative to the political climate and what's going on right now, considering we're about to have the next round of presidential elections. Maybe, if with what happened this morning in the coronavirus, I don't know. But talk about a time when like all of these topics were really coming to the surface. I think that I'll just put it out there. I am wildly not a Trump supporter. I'm sure anyone that's listened to my podcast knows that. Anyone in my life knows that.
I don't think I'd put myself in that category either.
Okay, good. So I'll say that. But I think if there was a good thing that came out of it, it's that things were unearthed.
Right.
I think for some, how can you deal with something if you don't know it's there? It's like in AA, the first step is to admit you have a problem, right? So all of these things started coming up. Is that part of why you think you were commenting more on Facebook and social? I mean, talk to me about that.
Definitely. I think that goes back to the point that I said, I'm better when I don't care. So up until that point, I really didn't care about social media. I didn't need to be on it. I'm kind of, I have an only child mentality when it comes to things like that. I am self-entertaining. So when it comes to social is more of an outlet than a avenue for me to get appreciation. But what bugs me and what has always bugged me about social media is the extreme, right and left slant of everything. And that's why I would find myself commenting more, because it seemed as though, anytime that extreme viewpoints get airspace, I think that overrepresents, viewpoints that are really on the fringe. And it underrepresents people who are in the middle just saying, look, this is noisy, so I'm going to stand outside and you guys argue in this space, because
I just think it eliminates that opportunity. Not only does it like overshadow, it just is like, nope. And the only thing that exists is those extremes, which is bullshit, but like, you know what I'm saying?
Yep. And that's the thing. And that's why, when I would find myself in those spaces, it was annoying, because I'm like, okay, first of all, any group of individuals, I don't care who it is, they're not a monolith. So there are different viewpoints, even in a group,
100%
that are underrepresented, they're undermentioned, underheard. But from the outside looking in, you tend to lump people. And then when you lump people, you tend to classify. And when you tend to classify, then you don't appreciate the things that make them unique inside of that group.
Well, what is racism? Hello.
Exactly. So that's why I'm like, you know what? As a Black man living in America, there are some things that are uniquely my experience, but there are other things that I collectively associate with and associate myself with when it comes to people who share the same skin color, same background, same socioeconomic status. So those are the things where I feel like, man, there are so many areas and so many places that we fail to tap into simply because we are naive to another person's story. And that's kind of what got me to commenting. And I said, you know what? I'm going to test this out, because instead of making these lengthy posts on social media, I'm just going to write on blog. So if other people gravitate towards that and they can appreciate the nuance, hopefully I've helped someone to gain enlightenment or insight. But if no one views it, it's at least an opportunity for me to get that out and for me to rationalize my own thoughts. So win-win. I don't care.
100%. 100. I mean, for me, writing is like, it's the best gift that I ever give myself, yet sometimes, and I'm like in the middle of going through, I told you I was feeling rusty and out of it. I'm like in the middle of going through I guess you could call it a breakup, even though we never officially whatever. And I don't even know why I just said that, but my brain is fried. Oh my God, what were you just saying, Chad? Jesus, I'm like having the biggest brain. You were saying different topics.
Yeah. Commenting on different topics, the reason why.
No, there was one specific thing that you said. Oh my God, there's a reason I brought that up. Wow, this is the first time. It's Friday. I've also done over 100 of these, and I've never had like that big of a blank. Oh my goodness. Anyway, okay.
I'm sure you will cycle back around to it.
I will. I have to stop thinking about it. I'm going to go on to something else. So, okay, you started this 3 years ago. You thought, I'm going to give voice to these perspectives, or at least my experience, that maybe wasn't happening. If people catch on to it, great. If they don't, they don't. Clearly people have. And now you're doing something over the last 3 months to make the website awesome. Yeah. Did something change because of coronavirus and you got more news on it? Did something change with the black market once, George Floyd was murdered? Like, what has happened this year? And yeah, I'm going to leave it at that because there's like a million follow-up questions I could ask. But
yeah, no, it's interesting that you ask that, because I am very active in my church. So actually one of George Floyd's uncles is a member of my church.
Really? And
So
I can't believe we haven't even said this. Where are you located exactly?
I am in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay.
So it's interesting because that kind of hit home in a different way.
Well, yeah, I
But
can imagine.
yeah, but one of the things that is kind of interesting that I guess I really never thought about up to this point is that physiologically I have felt the change over the last 4 years. And when I say physiologically, I'm talking about just the, I guess for lack of a better word, you can call it energy. There's a different energy that you feel now. Whether you go out, whether you interact with people, whether it's the unspoken or the unmentioned, that energy is extremely tiresome. And I was talking to a few, friends a few weeks ago, and we were talking about how insufficient it feels like interactions are now. That, you're having conversations with people, but there's something in the back of your mind that's like, yeah, you're saying all these niceties, but who are you? And if I'm being totally honest, anytime that I hear somebody speak, anytime that I see somebody do something or they have a viewpoint, I find myself asking myself, where are you on the political spectrum? And I interpret that as, can I trust what you're saying is genuine, or is there a motive? And I think I've come to associate that motive with political ideology. Now, I don't always fashion myself somebody that has to agree with you to get along with you or to see your viewpoint. But I do think there's an area that sometimes people cross into where they are not allowing truth and science and fact to guide their opinion and their viewpoints on things. And anytime I sense a person who's not being they're being disingenuous, I tend to detach. I'm just like, you know what, I can't associate with that, because to me, there have to be a set of rules that you play by. And one of those rules is we have to call water wet. We have to call the sky blue. There's just certain things that are non-negotiable when it comes to me. And I think that that's part of that whole tiring energy that I've been feeling over the past couple of years. Is it's very difficult to really trust people and to take what they say at face value without looking at it and saying, yeah, you say that, but why are you saying it? Is that truly what you think? Or are you being disingenuous with me because you have an agenda or you have a motive? And I think when it came to how that shaped my view of starting, not only starting the black market, but how I approached it, it was to really combat misinformation and give a different energy to what we've been experiencing. And I hope with people that view and people that read, I hope that they're picking up on that. But if not, again, that's my own way of just kind of getting it out and rationalizing it within myself, because even at 40, this stuff, it's sometimes just mind-boggling how weird it is.
That's a really nice way of putting it, Chad. Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Oh man, I'm like, what do I dig in first with what you said? Kind of, and I don't really remember what I was going to say before, but I know it was something along the lines of, because why you were saying you even started the black market was, okay, you've got these extreme views on one side, these extreme views on the other, but how about everything in between to maybe find the truth somewhere in the gray area?
Yep.
Personally, and you said, oh, there's just some things, these truths with me that like, there's no arguing. The sky is blue. Kind of. I mean, someone might say the sky is kind of like a shade of white right now. So all of that to say is like,
at least my crayon box says that the sky.
Sure. And who got paid to come up with the name? I think that the only truth is that one day we won't be here.
Exactly.
Everything else is up for a chance and interpretation, which actually is like extremely freeing on the one hand, because it's like, oh, I don't have to actually view the situation in that way.
Exactly.
However, I do stand with you in that, like, there are just some basic things, in my opinion, that are right and wrong, period, end of subject. And that, I think, is what is in question
Yep.
when it comes to people's political views right now. Because before it like wasn't about, are you a good person? Are you a bad person? Now I feel like that's what it comes down to. Like, do you actually give a shit about, there I go with the language, Chad, I told you. But like, do you care about me as a human being, or
Right.
do you just care about your wallet? I mean, to me, that's what it feels like. And then there's layers within that about caring about me as a human being. And it's so intense. It's never been as intense as it. So I get what you're saying. And it's like, it's weird because I never thought about trusting people in that regard, but I think about it too. We're more polarized than we've ever, and I need to know, especially now. And I like feel like every month I say that it matters to me more now, but Jesus, doesn't matter.
Yep.
Doesn't matter. And like, also, okay, so there's all of that, and I'm like, wow. But what do you think right now on your blogging? What's the most important subject to talk about? What are you talking about?
Disinformation.
Subjects with disinformation.
Disinformation.
You mean like fake news on social media, or?
I think it's the propensity for people to not do their own investigating. It's the propensity for people to be disingenuous about how they internalize information. I think it's also people's proclivities for sharing lies.
What's proclivity?
You know, in terms of,
or like proclaiming.
Yeah, you know, it's just that urge, or that want to do something that is just so anti. And you know, to me, you know, when you look at anything that's you know, society, if you look at society, you know, society has to function on basic rules and tenets. People agree this is how we're going to behave, this is how we're going to govern ourselves. That is collective, but there's a personal responsibility that comes with it. And I think anytime
but wait. Is that collective, and do we agree to it, or is that like a small portion of people saying this is what you have to do?
Well, I think it's both. I think it's both, because you have the common rules that people agree to abide by themselves. So you can consider that morality. There's just certain things that just aren't okay. I don't care what faith you are. I don't care what you believe. You know, harming children, that is not okay. I don't care where you are. But there are certain things that are more nuanced than that, such as, should rich people pay more taxes or less taxes? I think that when in a society, there are certain things that are non-negotiable. And when those things that are non-negotiable start to become negotiable, or you see them getting explained away, that's where I think society starts to unravel.
Okay, well, great. Then is white supremacy non-negotiable?
Non-negotiable.
So then what? And that's why our society is I mean, let's talk about what happened at the debates. Like, flat out, the current president of this country is asked to denounce the Proud Boys and white supremacists. And he's like, well, what? And he can't do it, and tells them to stand back and stand by.
Word salad. That's what it is. And but you have, and that's where I don't have to agree with your ideology. But when I see that, it makes me question, okay, we're at a point now to where we're negotiating things that were not negotiable before. That's new territory. That's a different game. We're no longer playing soccer. We're playing something else. We're no longer talking about where we want to be as a community or as a country. We're talking about, who are we? And that's a much more fundamental question than aspirational.
It sure is. And I mean, are we playing a different game? Mm-hmm. Or is that the game that we've actually been playing this whole time and none of us really knew?
It's a combination.
Or wanted to admit that? Like, that's what I'm really, because this isn't new. Come on. This isn't new. There's a reason why you were giving voice to Black voices and opinions 3 years ago, before this movement started with George Floyd, right? This isn't new. So I don't know. Are we playing a different game? Is it the same game?
I look at it in terms of, you know, I think the game has always been the same. There are inherent flaws within the system that have always needed to be reimagined, reconstructed, reconfigured. The difference is, I think that it's just like the ebb and flow with anything else. There are times where it's manageable. There are times where it's not perfect, but you can see the progress. Then there are times where the temperature gets turned up and it feels like, oh my God, this is different. It's not different. It's just that somebody turned the volume up on it. And it's just like listening to music. If you turn the volume down, I don't care what you're listening to, you can kind of manage through it. It's not your favorite song, but it's not getting on your nerves either. You crank the volume up on it, now it's uncomfortable. And now it's starting to affect you and impact you in ways such as, not only do I not like it, but I have a physical and a physiological response to it. And it's becoming physically and mentally and socially uncomfortable. And I think that's where we are, that a lot of the things that have really been under the rug the volume's gotten turned up on it. And now it's loud and people have to confront it. Now, the tiring part about that is not only are we having to confront it, but now we're having to hear people's viewpoints on whether or not these things are valid. And see, that's the frustrating part, is anytime that I feel like you try to rationalize another group's pain or you try to rationalize somebody else's viewpoint, I think that's off limits. I don't think I should ever comment on a woman's pain. I'm not a woman. I need to listen and say, okay, well, if I don't understand it, seek understanding. If I have questions, ask them. But my opinion in that moment should not, or my guiding light in that moment shouldn't be to justify whether or not it's valid. Because to me, you have really just undone everything that came before that. And I think that we are so inclined to want to give an opinion instead of be in a posture of listening, that's where we are. We do a lot of talking and not enough listening.
I agree on your last point. I mean, on a lot of the things that you say, but I think it's especially important when we're talking about, let's just call it bluntly. And I mean, if the experience that I assume that you're talking about is experience of race and racism, right? Say, hey, that was racist. And then I'm going to sit here as a white person. No, it wasn't. That's BS. I mean, I identify as queer. I'm also Jewish. And there's plenty of times where I experience something that, based on the entire 32 years of my life, that's going to trigger me really differently than it might trigger you. Who are you to say that my feelings are invalid? Or if I'm in an abusive relationship, it's the same kind of thing. My feelings are my feelings. It doesn't mean that you have to own them, but you can acknowledge them.
Exactly. It costs you nothing to acknowledge my pain.
And why do we have to say, hey, no, that's not true? Because, by the way, when I do that, it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with my own feelings of oh, God forbid I didn't do that. I'm not that's all my own white fragility bullshit, coming into play. And it eliminates, anything that you might be talking about. So
that's an important part, though, because when you talk about if my immediate reaction to somebody else's experience or pain is to qualify or disqualify, you have to ask yourself, what am I gaining by doing that?
Right.
Just because somebody says, you know what, I was racially profiled, as a person who may not be a part of that group, does that take something away from you? To have to acknowledge, you know what, I've never sat in that seat. I've never been through that. Help me understand more. Or if you don't, just say, hey, I'm sorry, I just don't have any frame of reference or any perspective to either appreciate what you've gone through or to be able to lend help. But I think when you have an opinion that qualifies and disqualifies, not only does it rob that person of their experience, basically saying, well, you were mistaken by what you saw. You were mistaken by what you felt. Really? We're doing that now? But I think it also puts that person who's making that comment in the spotlight to say, why are you so interested in disqualifying my experience?
Well, I think that it's a really weird thing because there's only certain topics in which someone's going to disqualify or qualify your feelings. And I think that when it has the potential to reflect something back on them or that group of people, whatever, Because if someone walks outside and is like, oh, I'm cold, no one's going to say to you, no, you're not.
No, you're not.
Like, you can't feel cold. Like, come on, because it has no relevance to me. It's not personal. The second it could become personal. But why does your experience have anything to do with me as a person? Unless, and maybe it does, because maybe I was a part of that experience, but still, like, I don't know. It drives me crazy. I get it. And I also really don't get it on the other hand.
I think that just goes to the point of, if you extend people latitude and grace, really two things I try to live by. Extend them latitude to express themselves and say, even though you may say, have viewpoints, live a lifestyle that I don't agree with, doesn't give me the right to make your life uncomfortable because of how I see the world. I live by a few simple truths. Are you breaking the law? Is what you're doing to me morally reprehensible? If those are the basic things, and I can say, you know what, that's their life. What they do behind closed doors, what they do with their money, what they do with whomever they choose to love is not my business. The only time it becomes my business is when it starts to infringe on the community in a negative way. And my perception of negative are the things I laid out. Is it morally corrupt, or is it something that is criminal? And outside of that, I don't care. And that's part of where I think a lot of people have to get to. Stop caring about what adults do. If it doesn't meet that criteria, detach yourself and your emotions from it. Because I think that's where we experience a lot of disconnect. We experience a lot of strife, is because we associate and we connect ourselves with so many things that just really aren't our business. Like, mind your business.
Make it personal. We make it personal, and it has nothing to do with us. Nothing. And I think that everything that we do in life, what we say, the actions, what we choose, it comes down to fear or love, right? Yeah. That's it. And if you're choosing love, more than half of the stuff that we're talking about, it just doesn't exist. But we're all afraid of each other. What are you going to take from me? What are you going to make that mean about me? And it's just a bunch of BS.
Even if it's something that we can't take.
Yeah, 100%. It's crazy. It's crazy. So, okay, which, by the way, you can't take my dignity. You can't take the amount of love that I give to myself or what I tell myself about myself, but I think that you can, based on the things that you say. And we try to do it to other people all the time. That's why, there are groups and classifications of people to make someone better than or worse than. And
exactly.
Okay, I want to switch subjects kind of, because I want to talk about the videos that you released and the songs. And I listened to a little bit of it, but talk to me about that adventure. What's the message that you're trying to get to people? Well, I'm going to leave it open-ended like that, and then we can dig into more detail.
Yeah. So, it's one of those things, especially with a few of the songs, that I probably have a couple of hundred instrumentals that I've put together over the years, starting back around maybe 2005, maybe. That's when I first started like messing around, dabbling in music. But I picked up a guitar in 2012, self-taught, kind of doodled around, and you see that's one back there, but I have 4 more on the shelf. That's another one of my compulsions.
I see 2, unless one's a bass and one's a guitar.
That one is my daughter's. That's her.
Okay.
First, and she, I end up playing it. It's a toy, and it has a unique sound, and I end up playing it so much because it sounds so cheap. And I'm like, oh my god,
and
that's
you like that.
I love it, and it's just the crappiest guitar to play. But I like it, and that's kind of where it started, is because just really an outlet to create, and I really wanted to connect audio with kind of some video material that I was looking to put out. So that's where it started. But me being the person that I am, I spent more time creating music than I did working on videos. So all of the video ideas that I have them kind of in my phone and say, okay, I need to get around to this content at some point. But really, between the website and making music, that is just kind of taken on its own journey. So I said, well, if I'm making it, I might as well put it out. and clean it up and package it up. So that's where I really, jumped out there and put some stuff on iTunes, put it on Spotify, Tidal, all the major platforms. But it's really just to coincide and just start releasing things, because again, my main goal is to just share my experience. And while they're instrumentals now, there will be words over them soon enough. But it's just really about taking what I've created, polishing it up, not keeping it for myself, and just really putting it out there and say, okay, well, if somebody can find inspiration from this, if this cheers somebody up, if this makes somebody's day, great, because it's not helping anybody sitting on my hard drive. So that's really kind of where I am. And I'm glad that you brought up at the beginning, being vulnerable, because I'm very protective of my art. I'm very protective of what I create, but I am trying to release that protectiveness and vulnerability. And I'm trying to be more open and to allow my experience to at least put another person's life and another person's experiences into context. And even if they don't feel like they can do something, at least hopefully my being able to do it, or at least attempting to do it, can give them enough inspiration. Say, well, if he can do it, I can do this. Because like I said, I am 40. I don't look it and act it, but I feel like I don't have anything to lose.
Age, you brought up your age a couple of times during this talk. I'm just saying, what did you recently turn 40? Is this a new thing?
I did. Okay. and 40 was actually a milestone for me. And it's one of those milestones, and it's kind of personal for me. I had an uncle who he passed at 44, and he had kidney failure at 32.
Mm.
And I've always viewed my mortality as being every day is not, it's not guaranteed, it's not promised.
Mm.
So I view myself, and I view myself in the context of society differently.
Mm.
I don't sweat small stuff. I try not to let petty arguments fester. I try to appreciate people for who they are. I try to live in the moment. And that's really kind of what guides me now, is to take every experience and maximize it, because you never know when it's going to be over. So, if you have music on your heart, whether it's, some wood blocks and some cymbals, put it out.
Or a cheap guitar, put it out there.
Or a $20 guitar from Target, play it.
I'm sorry about your uncle. That's really young. And I had a dog. My dog passed suddenly almost 2 years ago now.
Oh, wow.
And he was almost 6. I had him since he was 5 weeks old. And I feel really blessed that, like, to me, that's one of the most traumatic experience with death. But those things rattle you. And I think that everything happens just as it's supposed to, even if it's really hard. And that happened with your uncle, right? So you have a different perspective on how you live life, which, by the way, is a beautiful one to have, I think. If we could all have that a little bit more. I think it's a practice, though, every day.
Yeah, it is. It's intentional. That is key. It is definitely intentional.
Yeah. And by the way, so is choosing to be vulnerable and sharing your stuff, living on the other side of fear. You're choosing to share, which is love, rather than be scared of, like, what someone's going to think of it. And so you don't share. It's beautiful, not just for you, but for everybody that's a part of your community and follows you. And I love that you brought up the vulnerability thing. I was going to say that too. So you took the words out of my mouth. How old's your daughter, by the way?
She's 15.
She's 15. Okay. Is she your only kid?
She's the only one.
Okay, cool. What a good role model to have, I think. So, okay, one thing I want to go back to on the Black market really quickly is this isn't just about you, right? Like, you didn't create this just to share what you're blogging about or music. It's to give voice to other voices. I'm saying this because of the name of it and something I think you said before, specifically Black voices.
Yep.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So, I think that one of the things that, so I attended an HBCU. I attended Winston-Salem State University. And one of the eye-popping things for me is when I, first showed up at campus, I'd gone to 2 high schools, and one was probably 85% white. The other one was probably 90% white. My
By the
experience.
way, sorry to interrupt, but anyone that's listening that doesn't know, HSBC, historically Black college and
College
university.
and university. Yeah.
If I don't know, you intentionally, I imagine, chose to go to one
I
based on your
did.
high school experience.
I did.
Okay.
And part of that was location, proximity. Is I'd been living in North Carolina for a few months before attending college. I had a few scholarships, a few places, a few colleges. I'm originally from South Carolina. So I had a few, scholarships in South Carolina. Could have gone to the University of South Carolina, which is one of the colleges that, even to this day, I still follow. But what really changed my perspective is I went on a visit to the school. Now, granted, when you show up on some campuses, there are certain amenities that you're just like, wow, student union and all this, that, and the other. Winston-Salem State really didn't have any of that at the time. What really attracted me to the school was a diverse student population, even though it was predominantly Black. And, the person that I am today, kind of fast forwarding to the Black market, the appreciation that I have for the nuanced experiences in the Black community stems from an HBCU experience, because there were students from every walk of life, well-to-do students from, middle class, students from abroad. You had students who, they may have come from beginnings that may not have been as not wealthy or what have you, but you had a chance to experience what your entire community looked like. And it gave me an appreciation for not only myself, it gave me appreciation for where others come from. Because I think sometimes we tend to look at ourselves and we tend to over glamorize our struggles and the things that we've gone through. And then I see other people and I'm like, whoa, you had to do that to get here. And it really put me into context, which was helpful, because I think that's what allows me to have an appreciation for other people's experiences, because I know that I'm not here by what I've done. I'm not here because of my own success and the things that I've done. I'm here because there were a lot of people that helped me. There were a lot of people that helped me, a lot of people that saw things in me, and they gave me opportunities even when I didn't deserve it. So I look at that and I say, I can never get too high on my own accomplishments, never get too far into thinking, well, I'm just great. No, I'm not. I'm here because somebody saw enough in me to help. And I really feel like if I had not had that experience, that maybe my perception of who I am and how I fit into this larger paradigm, it may not be as clear. And I never want to get to the point to where I am selling myself short, but I also don't want to be in the situation where I am overstating my importance.
God, I'm so glad that you bring up this point about, okay, so what's the word that I'm looking for? Not a ladder, but there are layers of oppression, right? Like, I'm a woman, but as I said, I'm also Jewish, I'm also queer. There's layers to that, right? And within each of these groups, there is still vacuums and silos and like stereotypes of what it even is to be a part of that group and what it looks like. And so thinking about going to an HBCU and all of a sudden being like, you kind of see like, wait a second, like even my own stereotypes of what I think it means to be part of this group. Whoa, mind blowing. And then it does put your own perspective and reality in check. And I think that's really beautiful. For me, sometimes I have experiences where I'm like, yeah, I have had to go through a lot. And then it's like, oh, wait, no, you've also had some really amazing experiences and help along the way. I think really cool point, and makes sense that then would want to give voice to all of those different experiences. What would you say is the biggest thing that you have learned from creating this online community that you didn't expect?
Ooh, I've learned a lot. One of the few things I think I've learned, and this is more introspective than anything, is that, anytime I put my mind to something, I can make it come to fruition. but it's not about the end goal for me. It's about the journey. The journey is what teaches me the most about a situation, which is why I stopped emphasizing the end result, because through the journey, I kind of taught myself or retaught myself, because that was my original major in college was graphic design, which, you know, had a web design slant on it. But I really taught myself really, really difficult web applications and web development applications and background SEO. And it really kind of confirmed for me that I am my own limit. And that if you want something to be successful, pour more of you in it than anything else. Because if you take the appreciation for creating it, other people are bound to see the love you have for it or the love you put in it. Even if they don't agree with it, they can still appreciate the passion, the love you put in it. And I think that's the one thing I think it reconfirmed for me. Keep pouring love into things. Keep doing things that not only bring you joy, but you will work on at 2:00 in the morning when everyone else is asleep. Things that, you know, you will gladly do for free as well as make money on it. And to me, that's a guiding principle. I'll know how much I love it if I do it in my spare time. If I wouldn't do it in my spare time, nah, it's not for me. And to me, that's what really the black market is I have probably spent, and I keep numbers even on my own work, but I have probably put no less than 500 man hours just into the website, just the website. And I'm like, it's one site, but everything from the store to the, you know, the front page to the blog to the, you know, the connections, all the interconnectivity, the SEO measurements, the Google analytics, I plugged all that in just as kind of, this is my part-time thing. And it takes a lot of time. It takes time away from the other things that I like to do, like making music. I also have a print shop in my garage. But it's just one of those things. I'm like, I love it. I like to do it. I want to see it look good. I want to see it be successful. And I want other people to have a certain feeling and experience when they get there. But not only did I put time in writing my thoughts, but I want you to appreciate what it looks like when you get there. Now, it's not where I want it to be, but I feel like there can be an appreciation for it when people visit. And again, you know, I kind of think back to my mom's her house. She had one room that no one can go in. She kept it pristine. Everything in it was white. The carpet, the you know, the chairs. But I think about that experience is sometimes she would go into that room and she would just sit. And just being in that environment made her feel good. And everything that I create, I want it to feel good. I want it to feel like that there is some release or some reprieve that you get being here. And when I make things, that's kind of what I have in mind, is I want you to have an experience when you're there.
Okay. I just think that you are wonderful, Chad, and I'm so glad that we got connected. So first of all, I love the idea of having an experience. I don't think that there's a creative out there. I mean, in my head, creativity goes hand in hand with art. And I feel like when you, like you said, you're your own limit, right? Like you're putting you into that. You can't really not have the feeling. It's like the energy thing you were talking about and the shift in energy. That's all we are at the end of the day. That's all anything is that we create, and you can feel that energy when it's, you know, true and genuine to the heart. I also love what you said about being our own limit. And it's like, God, I'm sitting here kicking myself in the butt with all going back to my breakup and brain fart that I was talking about. It's like, there are things and it's like building this podcast and this business, like it's scary.
Which I think is amazing, by the way.
Thank you. It's scary when you do put yourself in there, right? Especially as a creative, because it is vulnerable, like you were saying, and it's so easy to be like, I'm going to pull back. And I could have 1,000 people around me supporting this, which I do, right? And not to say that I'm bragging. I'm only saying that because even with all the support, if I don't actually do it, nothing happens. Of course, I'm the own limit. And I also have actually no idea what my limits are. Just like you don't. It's like, oh, you put out your music. Who knows what's actually going to happen, but you actually do it. And by the way, maybe this will become your first, like not your part-time thing. And like reading about all this entrepreneur stuff. I mean, one of the guiding things that so many people say is find something that no matter how much non-money you're making or how many times you fail, you still going to want to get up and do it every day.
Exactly. Interesting story, because like I said, I have this firm belief in 3 to 5 streams of income. I have a full-time job. That's where I don't think I mentioned that.
Of course you do.
Full-time job. And in my full-time job,
Other than being a dad.
And a dad, which is probably the most interesting part of my life, is the family dynamic that we have. It's crazy. But,
We're gonna need to have another episode to talk about all that.
Oh yeah. All my dad stories. I can tell some of my bad dad jokes. Yeah, my daughter would kill me if she knew I was telling those. But yeah, I think one of the things about being in this space right now is that I could find an excuse to say I don't have time.
Totally.
I work 50 to 60 hours a week in my full-time job. I am a manager at a Fortune 500 company. I have direct reports. I have P&L responsibility. So this isn't my full-time. I don't have endless hours to dedicate.
Well, damn. Okay.
So what I do is I have an amazing wife that she operates everything in the home. And I'm like, I would be a dirty, smelly mess if it wasn't for her. But she's amazing at what she does, which is keep me sane, keep everything else around here running. But it allows me that freedom and flexibility to venture into these things. And what I have found is that I have more time than I thought I had. I found myself wasting a lot of time.
Of course.
Television, just scrolling through Instagram, doing whatever. YouTube is my pitfall. Yeah, I listen to YouTube in the shower, which is scary.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there's
no, Instagram is my kryptonite for sure.
Like there's got to be a clinical definition for what I'm doing. It's like, stay off YouTube. But I learned
Social Dilemma.
Yeah, but that's my opportunity to learn, because I'm a constant processor of information. And, I've found myself more or less in the past couple of months, I want to take in as much information as I can.
Sure.
Because I don't, I'm in the posture of like, I don't know what I need. I don't know what I don't know. So let me see if I can find that out. And what I find myself is, even though I may listen to hour upon hour upon hour of YouTube videos, I find myself picking up more habits than information. So habits of successful people. Like somebody can say, oh, well, you bake a cake this way. And then you turn around and watch another one. They say, well, you bake it this way. And you're looking at it and you're like, well, there's 2 different ways. But the common thread that you find in there is they got off their behind and they did it.
Sure.
And to me, processing that way helps me to really read between the lines to say, well, to be successful, you don't always have to be the best. Sometimes you just have to be present. You have to be available. You have to put it out there. And that's kind of where I branched off. So, working full time, having the things that, I wanted to do, I had to find the time to do it. So again, I have a full print shop that's in my garage. I still do graphics, and websites and all those things. I manage my own businesses. I have 2 right now. And I do no marketing. I have no ads. I have no commercials. And I was thinking the other day while I was going through, some accounting software, and I did 6 figures in 1 year with no marketing in just the black market in Dynamo Ink Company. And I'm like, how did I do that?
And yet you still feel like you have to have this full-time job and all this stuff. My goodness. I mean, good.
But I just love what I do. I just love it. And it, to me, it's not work. It's, I would be doing it if I weren't making $1. And that's why I think it's so sustainable.
And you can hear the passion in your voice. Like you said, you wouldn't be up at 2 a.m. doing it. You know, you'd be otherwise. And I mean, I think it's amazing. I really do. And that you have the support of your family to be able to do it. I mean, so what someone told me this one time, like, I'm going to botch how it goes, but basically it's like, if you want something done, ask a busy person. It's crazy because in the beginning you're like, oh, there's only 24 hours in a day, but the amount of time that we do waste, like doing nothing. I mean, it's wild. So, You're inspiring. Absolutely. I love it. I also think it's really funny that we started this conversation with me being like, yeah, you know, the creator of the black market and you're a creative. What else? And you're like, nah, I think that's it. Like that. Come on. That's far from it. There's so much to know. And
I never overstate my importance because again, I am a member of a community, and you know, I told my wife, I said, I'd be glad if I make $1, you know, as a businessman, because I give away more than I actually feel like I'm selling. Because I to me, it's passion. I'm passionate about things. I don't see myself as being amazing or great. I just see myself as like, you know, God gave me a gift. I'm going to use it. And so really, as long as I use it, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And I feel like that if you keep things to yourself and you feel like everything needs to be traded for $1, I think you lose the thing that makes it what it is. And if people appreciate it, you will find either payment or gratitude on the back end, and you will never have to ask for it. But if you sell people and you proposition them and you're constantly, you know, buy my thing, people don't have an appreciation for you. They may appreciate the product, but you, the person, or you, the entity, turns them off. And that's just not my energy.
I mean, there's so many things that all go back to the things that we've already talked about, right? And again, it's fear or love. Are you doing it because it's like, I've got to make money and I'm doing this because of that? Are you doing it because you love it and you want to share that? And da-da-da-da-da. I mean, it's like people think that, oh, I have this gift or this talent. I've got to hold on to it because someone's going to steal it. Mm-hmm. BS. Like you said, you were given a talent. I was, and everybody was, like Oprah, you know, pass out the talents. But what actually happens is when I shine my light on yours, mm-hmm. it becomes brighter together. It doesn't get dimmed at all. It will get dimmed on its own, right? The battery is going to die. So I think it's amazing what you're doing. Keep at it. I want to just know you more as a person now. I'm like, oh.
I'm always welcome to come back. Just let me know.
Okay. Sure.
No, this was amazing. And I will tell you, I liked what you said there. Because I think as creative, sometimes there's a competitive spirit that gets kind of ingrained. I'm trying to be PC here. I think there's a competitive spirit that gets pushed, that, you know, somehow there's $1 to be made and we're fighting for it. I don't think that's true. I think that I think rising tides lift all boats. So you extending me the invite, I could easily say, well, why should I do that? That's not how I see the world. Well, why not? Like, let me extend, you know, to help somebody else build. And I just thank goodness somebody saw enough in what I was doing to invite me. I mean, to me, that's amazing. And I feel like that as creatives, we can give each other the type of exposure that we know is so hard to come by sometimes, or just to help somebody promote something and not ask for anything in return. And at some point in time, that's going to be repaid back to you. That's what I firmly believe. And I firmly believe that there are things that you can pick up from experiences that you have. And I feel like this is one of them, because, you know, just good dialogue and good exchanges of information with people that you have never met, it can be highly rewarding. And I feel today like, man, you know, I really, really enjoyed this. This was really fun.
Oh, it's inspiring. I leave and I'm lit up from this conversation. And thank you for saying all that. I just appreciate you saying yes. And it's funny because I was going to ask, why did you say yes? I don't think I have to ask that now. It's like
why not?
Exactly. Clearly. And I think it's amazing. And it's funny because I was talking to my friend Amelia this week. She's reading this book about money. And the 3 words, I'm not like a resolution kind of gal, but for New Year's this year, I was like, okay, my 3 words, my intention, what I want to live by is joy, love, and abundance. Abundance. Like, why don't we choose to live into that? Instead, it's like, well, here's a savings on this and here's a great deal. It's like, well, why don't even just our mindset about money work a little bit differently? And if you believe in quantum physics or the law of attraction, any of that stuff, it's just a language shift, a shift in perspective, going back to all the stuff we've talked about. Now,
yep.
Go ahead, whatever.
No, you said something, because I think it's Maya Angelou that says, if you can't change your position or situation, change your perspective. And that's intentional. That's mental. And I think that a lot of what we endure is because we feel like we have to have a position, or we have to take a position that we have no alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
And you can choose how you see the world. You can choose how you see your situation. And when
Not
I
you
grew up,
can, we do in every moment.
exactly. And I think one of the things that illustrates that for me is when I grew up, we weren't poor, but looking back on it, I thought we had a lot more money than we had.
Mm.
And when I think about it, I think about it and I say, there were a lot of days, and I told my wife this story the first time we met. I said, I have a really close relationship with my family, my extended family, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles. And I said, the reason that is, the case is because my mom was a full-time teacher as a single mom. And there were times where we would go through the week and we would eat dinner at my grandparents' house. I thought we were just going over there to have fun. I was like, we're going to grandma and grandpa's.
Yeah.
Come to find out, my mom was broke. She had no money for us to eat that day. And I look back and I say, that was my perspective then. Nobody told me otherwise. But growing up now, I have an appreciation not only for my grandparents, that I got to spend that time with them, and thank goodness they're still alive. My grandfather, he's 82 and he still tries to drive. And
Not
he's
so
a he's a pastor, and he pastors in like rural North Carolina. So he drives like 2 hours every Sunday to pastor, and he's been doing this for 50 years.
Dang. Good for him.
So
Wow.
that's where I'm like, anytime that I say, oh, I'm tired, I got to think like my granddad is 82 and he gets up every morning. I have no excuse, get up.
Oh, I love that.
Social pressure. But no, I think back and I'm like, you know what? I've been blessed. I've been blessed not because we've had a bunch, but I have people around me that I absolutely love to death. They love me. And that's my perspective. I can look and say, well, I don't have this, and that's because I grew up and I didn't have a lot. I choose to look at the world differently. And I said, I am who I am because of that, not in spite of that. And that's how I choose to see things.
Yes. It's a simple statement. It's literally, I mean, something as simple as saying life doesn't happen to me. It happens for me. Right? Just that simple statement changes everything. That happens at every moment. You say, oh, we can choose. I'm like, no, actually we do choose. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we're conscious to it and sometimes we're not.
Yes.
That's the practice. So, okay, Dad, oh God, we keep talking for a long time. I got to wrap it up and bring it back to your shoes. Why have you only worn 4 out of the 35? I told you we were going to end by talking about that.
So, first pair of Air Jordans that I ever owned was in 1986. My grandfather, who was a security guard at the Smithsonian, would come down every summer with my grandmother. And before school, I would always get 1 pair of shoes. Well, take it back to the story about, us growing up, we didn't really have a ton. We weren't poor, but we had some financial issues at times. But my grandfather would come down and he would tell me, you can get any pair of shoes you want. So I knew, if you take my shot, I'm going for the Air Jordans. So the first pair of Air Jordans that I ever owned was Air Jordan 3s, the cement, the cement black and white. Love those shoes. Well, fast forward, I always promised myself, I said, you know what, when I grow up and I start making my own money and, I become this executive and whatnot, I'm going to buy shoes and I'm going to collect sneakers. The reason I've only worn 4 of them is because I used to have to stretch a pair of sneakers from summer to Christmas and from Christmas to summer. So I had to be really pragmatic about, you can't wear them to school today because there's going to be recess, and at recess you're going to want to play, and you can't play in your new shoes, so we can't wear those today. And I still practice that to this day. If it's raining, if it's muddy, if I'm going to be outside, they stay in the box. I have a full-time job. I can't wear sneakers to work, so they sit there. And some of them, I think some of them probably, if I go on StockX or another trading site, some of them are so old, they've probably, gained $200, $300, $400 in value.
Shut up. Okay, what's the most valuable pair? How is a pair of sneakers? I bought these Nikes one time. I'll admit it. I lived in Boston for 8 years, and there's this crazy bodega that you go in and you have to walk through the Snapple machine to get to it. And then there's this crazy shoe store. I told you.
Oh, that's amazing. See, those are the best kind.
Oh my God. So I bought these Nike high tops that were from some fashion show, and they were bright orange soles and black, but then they had these like crazy graffiti. Anyway, they were like $250. I would say that's like the most expensive pair of sneakers I ever bought. And I still to this day, I'm like, why did you do that? They were awesome though. But okay, what's the most expensive pair you think you have?
So the most expensive pair that I think I have are a pair of Air Jordan 11s. They call them graduations. So they're patent leather black. They're suede. Probably
patent leather and suede.
Mm-hmm. They came out about 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay.
And on resale, they are probably $460, $470. Like if I just told that, resold them today because they're never worn.
I was gonna say, if they're good.
Yeah, they're so like 80% of my shoes are dead stock. And dead stock just really means
why buy them if you're never gonna wear them?
Because there's really one main like model that I like, and it's the Air Jordan 6. I've always loved the Air Jordan 6. I was a Bulls fan growing up. I love sneakers. I was a sneakerhead. I was so much of a sneakerhead that I would draw the shoes I couldn't afford to buy. So that's kind of how I got started with art. So I would draw shoes and I would say, if I work for Nike, I would make it look like this. So I would draw shoes, and my mom would be like, you have to stop drawing sneakers on your.
Did you ever send them in or try to work for Nike? Come on.
No, it ended up becoming my art projects in school. But I buy them because I like them, and I have the full intention of wearing them. Problem is, I stick them in the box, and I forget I have them.
Yeah.
When another pair of because like I said, I'm super busy. So if I'm not at work, before COVID, but if I was in the office, I'd be working, and then I come home. And then if, I had t-shirt orders or anything, I'd print t-shirt orders and I'd sit down, I'd draw a little bit. I really didn't go a lot. I didn't go a lot of places. So the few and far between times that I would go places, I would try to find a pair that I hadn't worn, but kind of the kid in me saying, nah, it's going to rain. Nah, it's going to be dirty. I can't wear those. Let me reach for a pair that I've already had on my feet. And that's how I've ended up wearing the same pair over and over again. And my wife, she comes in and she just kind of shakes her head, and it's become a running joke because they call it Mount Jordan because it just stacks up to the ceiling.
Yeah, I love that.
And I'm like, nah, I'm going to sell them. I'm going to get rid of them. She's like, no, because if you sell them, then, you're going to be moping around here, and I don't want to deal with that. So
that's amazing. I love it. And I get it. And then I can see how that's a vicious cycle. Vicious maybe is a strong word, but
it's my weakness. I don't drink coffee. I don't really spend a lot of money on other places. It's cars and shoes. And I'm like,
oh my God. Okay. What kind of car? Well, I won't even go there actually. I like cars too. Okay. We'll have to talk again. Were you going to say something? It looked like you were about to say something.
No, I was just going to say, I think that if my financial advisor knew how much money, well, he knows how much money I spend on shoes, that, he would put me on a budget, but I balance it out because I don't really spend money elsewhere.
Yeah, let's justify it. Let's talk about
I don't do the Starbucks coffee, so I justify it by saying, I'm not a latte guy, so, if you buy 10 lattes, that's really kind of like the pair of one. One person. It's not true, but that's how
it is pretty crazy how much a coffee like. I hear you on that. It's insane. Okay.
My daughter's on that kick, and she's 15, and I'm like, you don't have a job, you can't drink $10.
Yeah, no. But you better nip that in the bud right now. It could get out of control real fast.
McDonald's, that's where you're going to be getting coffee.
99 cents. That's okay. But even that adds up. At that point. All right, Chad. I want to just give you an opportunity. Harry, for anyone that's listening, y'all knows the producer of the podcast who works on it. He's the one that reached out, found you, and y'all had the initial conversations. I trust him. He somehow, I firmly believe, trust the universe. It all happens as it's supposed to. Mm-hmm. No one that I've had on, I'm like, I wish I didn't talk to you. Like, I always more. So I'm glad we connected, but I would love to know what made you say yes? And is there any message that, knowing, the purpose of the podcast and all the things we've talked about, anything you want to say that I didn't ask you about or that you think is a really important message to share? Now's your time.
Yeah, good question. The reason I said yes is, I'm open to new opportunities. I think that anytime that you have a chance to connect with people, especially people who are in the same space, people that that you see something that they're doing and it looks worthwhile, and they're getting it off the ground, lend what you can to it. Give them some energy, give them some air, and try to make it happen.
What
I
you were
also
talking about
believe that,
before, for sure.
yeah, and I feel like just how polished it was when Harry reached out, and he had it basically buttoned up. Any questions I had, he answered it. And I really didn't have too many reservations, but I just felt like this was positive. And I'm really at that space where I feel like that we're at a deficit for positive interactions and just an opportunity to share, sit back, share, and let the chips fall where they may. And that's really why I said, yeah. And one of the things that I think, is really my mantra for the remainder of this year, and really going into 2021, is, we have to get back to a position as people where we start seeing the humanity in others. And I think that's where that vulnerability it's a gamble. And that gamble is, particularly, are you allowing yourself to be open so that you will hopefully give license to others who are afraid of being open and being vulnerable to be that way? Because I feel like a lot of what we go through as a society is because we have all of these grievances and all of these alts, but there's no recourse for us to start identifying and reconciling those. And I think it really all starts with sharing, because I guarantee you, when you sit and talk to somebody and you hear their story, it's difficult to demonize them at that point. And I think the more we talk and the more we hear, we're more alike than we are different. And we have similar yet different experiences. You gain an appreciation for other people and where they've come from. So if there's one message I can leave, it's that we all have purpose. We are all granted these inalienable rights by our Creator. And that is where I think we need to start with forming relationship with others.
Well, now I know really why you are meant to be on this podcast, is because that is literally the foundation of why this podcast exists. It's when you're vulnerable with someone and you share and you create that connection, you can't hate them. You just can't, when someone's really opening themselves to you, and it's beautiful. And just thank you for being that person and sharing it.
No, thank you. Thank you.
It was amazing talking with you. And on that note, we're going to end this episode today. So thank you so much, Chad. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the One World, Your Story podcast. If you enjoyed hearing this story and you wish to hear more, make sure you subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube, and of course, follow us on Instagram at OneWorldYourStory. From all of us here at the One World, Your Story podcast, we are sending you so much joy and love. Have a wonderful rest of your day.